Hello, welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all. But sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, because we're all over the place, aren't we? All over the world. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Health In Show, and we are delighted to have you participate with us today. Thank you for being here. Without you, we have no show. So we are so happy. So please feel free anytime during the show to communicate with us in our chat. Just put your name, nickname, whatever you like under the video, and you can comment, ask questions, and let us know you're there. And also you can call in to 919-518-9773. That goes right into our studio. And you can come in on Skype, and that would be voice, not video. So that would be computers, and that's plural. Then the number 2K voice. Throughout the show, we'd love to have you join us, ask questions, comment, and participate. Just share your experiences with your life. That would be great. And with me today is Deepak. Hey there, Dr. Deepak.
Hello, Malin.
Hey, good to see you. All the way from India. Or
Yeah,
I could say, oh, I'm all the way from America. Who knows, right? It depends on which way we're coming. And then Uta, hi.
Hello, hello. Coming all the way from Portugal. So we're across the globe today.
We sure
Like
are.
always.
Like always. So tell us, who do we have today?
We have the lovely Christine Bauman with us today. And we're excited because she's going to talk to us about a very interesting therapeutic approach. I don't know too much about it, so I'm looking forward to hearing from her. She's a Buteyko, I hope I pronounced that correctly, practitioner. So hello, Christine, how are you?
Good morning. I'm very happy to join you from beautiful British Columbia.
Perfect. Hello. So what is Buteyko?
It's a breathing technique. It was developed in the 50s by a Ukrainian doctor in Russia at the time. And it focuses on responsivity to your metabolic needs. It's not about deep breathing. It's about what does your body need in this moment. It's about efficiency, breathing the amount of air you need, given the activity you're doing, and breathing in the right way. So there's a lot of elements to it that work together. It's a simple, powerful technique, and it was pretty amazing for me. It saved my life.
Oh, so you had an issue with breathing that made you find this method?
Yes, which is, I think, true for a lot of people who are in natural therapies. From the age of 7, I had allergies and asthma. My father did, my grandfather did. It's kind of riddled throughout my family. And I grew out of it in my early 20s and kind of didn't really pay attention. It was just one of those nuisance things that was part of my life. And then when I was in my mid 30s, life had taken a turn. And when I look back on it now, is a case of multiple stressors over a long period of time, and then the whole system breaks down. And so I had a life-threatening asthma attack, which was complicated by bacterial pneumonia at the time. And so I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And when I came out, I was very weak, and I had a shopping bag full of drugs, and my respirologist is saying, you should be really glad you're alive. And I'm like, I am really glad I'm alive, but I really don't want all these drugs. And he was quite offended. And he said, wow, this is what you'll need for the rest of your life, which is what they always say, right? And I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. And so I was living in Japan at the time, which is a place that has many different traditions that can be explored. And it's not alternative or complementary there. It's what they did for a long time until allopathic medicine showed up. And so I tried acupuncture, and I tried yoga, and I tried reflexology, and I tried shiatsu, and you name it, I think I tried it. Changed my diet, a little bit of change, but I was still on all these medications. And it was a friend of mine who had moved back to the UK. We had been very good friends living in the same apartment building in Kyoto. And she saw a BBC program on this breathing technique. And this is in the late 90s. And so YouTube, not yet. And so she got a transcript of the program, put it in an envelope, and mailed it to me. And it was 3 pages long. And I read it and I said, this is it. This is going to change my life. It was completely irrational. There was no reason for me to think so, but it was one of those moments that you have. And so I went to England and I did the course and I got better. And I decided to leave Japan and return to Canada and start teaching it because nobody else was doing it.
Fantastic.
That's a long answer to a short question.
No, a beautiful answer. I mean, congratulations for getting a handle on something that is so very, such a huge impact on your life. I mean, an asthma attack is very scary. And if they send you home with the amount of tablets that you were describing, so are you still taking any drugs, or have you come off them altogether with this method?
Well, it took me about 2 years to get off of the steroids. The reliever medication, which I was using, was called salbutamol. People refer to it as the blue puffer. And so I had fewer and fewer attacks, and they were becoming more and more manageable. And so then the need for medication was decreasing. I have to just say, I've had clients or potential clients who come to me and say, oh, great, this is our first session. Can I stop using my drugs? And I'm like, no, you cannot. Don't even think about it. And so, yeah, it takes some time. And it's about strengthening the system so that the need for that medication decreases. So
I would
point, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would imagine, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but I would imagine, and my daughters have asthma, they use the puffer. My mother has a chronic bronchitis kind of thing, CP, whatever it is. It's very scary when you can't breathe. And to trust a breathing technique and for somebody to go off of their meds is quite a challenging situation, I would imagine. In the people that you work with, it's gradual, I'm sure. So for them to have the faith to, go off those, and I do not like those medicines. I can see what they do, so it's quite extraordinary.
That's a really good point, Marilyn. And I think that you've really hit on one of the most important pieces is the emotional dependence on these medications, especially when someone has a really serious attack. And I did. I mean, I was dying, and the doctor said I was extremely lucky. And one of those moments that, is imprinted on your brain for the rest of time. And so, yes, there are some people that I work with that are skeptical. Some people are kind of being pushed into my office by a worried spouse or mother. But there's other people who are just really gung-ho, which is what I mentioned to you. But there's still that emotional dependence. And the reality is that I still own a blue puffer. And so I make it clear to people, you never know when you're going to get that trigger that is so extreme that the breathing cannot overcome that. You need to have that backup. It's really important. But the steroids long-term, they cause a lot of issues for people. Thins the skin, you have immune suppression. When some people are prednisone dependent, which is pretty serious, you get the blown up face. There's a lot of issues with it long term. Short term, you're okay. It's not a big deal. To take 250 micrograms of a puffer compared to 50 grams of prednisone because your asthma is out of control. It's such a small amount. You'll be okay for a while. Knowing that you're heading in the right direction. You're changing your lifestyle, you're changing your diet, you're training your breathing.
Yeah, prednisone is wicked.
But it saved my life, right?
Sure.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're exactly right in terms of that trust. I don't usually tell this story because it was embarrassing, but it's a very important one. When it was about 4 years after I'd done Buteyko and I did the training, I started teaching it, and I went to Australia to visit friends over Christmas time. And it was again a situation of multiple stressors. So I had been great, no asthma, no drugs, and I was getting ready to go. I'm going through my cosmetic bag and I see a blue puffer in there and it's like 3 years out of date. And I said, oh, this is out of date. It's probably no good. And I threw it in the garbage. And so I get on a plane. It's wintertime in Canada. So it's like -10. And I go to Australia where it's summertime and it's like 40 degrees. And then in those days, it was like a 25-hour flight for me from Toronto. And so there was all of that and the bad air, bad food. And I get off the plane and we go to the beach and we're drinking lots of alcohol and we're chatting. And I have crayfish. Now in Canada, crayfish are this big and they're found in fresh water. But in Australia, they're like lobsters and they're saltwater. And so everybody gets one. So I'm eating crayfish for the first time in my life. And I'm back at the tent with my friend. And I'm thinking, I'm breathless. And I was quite offended. It's like, I'm breathless. What's going on here? And it took me a while to realize that I was having an asthma attack for the first time in like 2 years. And I'm like, shit. And so it's like, what are we going to do here? Because we're in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be 40 minutes to the hospital. And, it's party time. And so I say to my friend, look, I'm going to do Buteyko breathing. There's ways that you can measure if you're improving or you're getting worse. And so it's a breath hold. It's a kind of a breath hold. And so I said to him, look, I'm going to do one of the exercises for 20 minutes. And he's looking at me. He's like, okay, 10 minutes. If I don't see any improvement, then we'll go to the hospital. And he's like, all right. And so I do one of the breathing exercises, and a big part of it is relaxation, right? Many, many breathing techniques is about relaxation. And that is a piece of Buteyko. So I do that. And I do a breath hold at the end of the 5 minutes. So you basically breathe in and then you breathe out and you pinch your nose. So it's on the exhale. You pinch your nose and you hold your breath until you start to feel uncomfortable. Well, if you're really healthy, it should be about 35 to 60 seconds. So I did it. It was 2. I could hold my breath for 2 seconds. And so I'm working on the breathing technique. I'm working on relaxing. And after 10 minutes, I do another breath hold and it's 3. And so my friend's like, and I'm like, I'm better. It's another second higher. And I'm barely able to speak to say this, right? It's like, it's another second, right? It was like that. And so he's kind of like, okay, so another 10 minutes and then it's 4 and another 10 minutes and then it's 5. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, if I just had my blue puffer, I would be done now. But I was very curious as well. It's like, okay, how good is Buteyko? Is it really that good? And the only reason that I could do that is because I had 4 years of experience and I was teaching it and I had a lot of confidence in it. Anyway, make a long, short story, not too much longer. It was about 2.5 hours that I just focused on my breathing. But every time I did the comfortable pause, it was another 1 or 2 seconds more. So when it finally got to be 20, I could lie down and go to sleep. And in the morning, I did some more breathing exercises and it was back up to where it should be at 40 seconds or whatever it was at that time. So that was kind of the message I got was don't get cocky and don't get careless. So yeah. So when I'm working with people who are all ready to throw away their drugs at a moment's notice, I'll tell them the story. And now, thousands of people know it too.
But that's an important message. That's a complimentary message. and it's important that we share that. But I have plenty of questions, but Uta, Deepak?
Deepak, you want to go? Have any questions?
Yes, this is wonderful to know about this technique. But in this show, we are having many people who does not know about these techniques. So we need to know more about this actually technique. What is it? And is this only for the asthma or for any other disease also?
The short answer for your second question is that, from my point of view, everybody should learn how to breathe better, particularly in COVID. I won't get into masks right now, the efficacy of them, but in terms of your breathing, they're horrible. They're horrible for your breathing. I am getting so many people now who are having difficulties, who never had difficulties before. And it's because of, almost 2 years now of wearing masks on a regular basis. So everybody needs it, basically. So the technique itself, it's about that self-awareness piece first. It's like, what is my breathing? So when I work with people, it's like, okay, the simplest and easiest one is, how many breaths are you taking in a minute? So if you're breathing 20 or 30 breaths per minute, it's triggered the sympathetic response, and you are breathing way too fast. So if you think of a car that's idling high, you may not know what's wrong with your car, but you know that it's working way too hard. And it's the same with your breathing. Your breathing should be 8 to 12 breaths per minute, or even lower than that. What you see in the literature is that most people breathe 12 to 20 breaths per minute, right? That's kind of the standard. But the reality is, if you look at a physiology textbook from 200 years ago, people were breathing 8 to 12 breaths per minute. As a species, we are breathing faster than we ever have probably in the history of the world. So that's an important piece, right? Is how fast are you breathing? So if you're breathing too fast, you want to slow it down. Boom, number one, right? So, and that's true for lots of breathing techniques, right? Is that you want to slow down your breath. The in-breath compared to the out-breath, it should be shorter, right? Because on your in-breath, you're triggering the parasympathetic response. On the out-breath, you're triggering, the sympathetic response. On the out-breath, you're triggering the parasympathetic response, right? And so that's what you want to cultivate. So it's really about establishing a new, healthy, unconscious breathing pattern. That's really what Buteyko is, right? At the end of the day. And for most people, it means breathing slower. It means breathing less. It means using your diaphragm instead of using your chest and your shoulder muscles, for example, right? There's other pieces. The next piece is source. Are you breathing through your mouth, or are you breathing through your nose? And Buteyko is all about breathing through your nose, right? That's the foundation of everything else that we do. Inhale and exhale. So there's lots of different pieces, and nobody breathes the same way as somebody else. It's like snowflakes, right? We all breathe differently. And it's like one piece we breathe well, another piece not so good. And it changes, right? How you breathe when you're sleeping is different than how you breathe when you're eating, which is different when you're on a podcast, right? It's so responsive to stimuli, whether it's external or internal. The breathing responds first.
So this is a therapeutic approach or a treatment that someone who's suffering of asthma, for example, has to continue for their whole life. It's not something they can do now and then say, okay, the situation is that will improve, that I never have to do it again. So it's something they should get accustomed to and actually learn to keep doing.
That's a really good point, Ota. Yes and no. Mm-hmm. So when one is learning to retrain their breathing, they have to focus. And the beauty of breathing, in terms of all of the systems of your body, is that you can completely ignore it, or you can have complete attention to it, and you can modify it, you can change it. If you want to change your pulse, your blood pressure, you do it through your breathing. It's not a direct thing. If you want to change your digestion, you do it through your breathing, right? All of the other systems in your body, there's at least one step removed and sometimes several steps removed, right? But when it comes to your breathing, I ignore it or I'm totally focused. So the beauty of it is that once you've retrained your breathing, you can forget about it. You can forget about it. But you also have this foundation, this homing device, which is your own body, your own mind, that when you're going off track, it's like, oh, what's happening over there? Why is this going on? I need to get back to the breathing exercises. Right? Maybe someone's getting divorced, maybe somebody's sick, right? That is going to change your breathing. So when you have an ongoing stressor, your breathing is changing to that. And when that stressor is removed, you now have a new pattern established, right? So you have a stressed pattern of breathing. And so you want to return to home. But if you don't know where home is, you can't get there. You just know something's wrong. That's all you know. Right?
And if someone starts applying new breathing techniques, how long does that usually take for someone to actually see an improvement in the application?
Depends on the condition.
Mm-hmm.
Asthma, it probably responds the most quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can have people within 3 days going from using their blue puffer 3 times a day to using it one time a day, and in a week not using it at all. So it can be quite dramatic in that case. But in case of Marilyn's mother, you know, we have chronic bronchitis. Is that right? Yeah. See, and how long has she had it? That's the other thing, right? So rule of thumb in the natural world, which you probably know already, is for every year that you're sick with something, it's a month of recovery, at least. Right? So if something's been going on for 20 years, you're looking at 20 months. So 2 years to kind of really make a huge difference that's ongoing.
Wow. That's
I think Marilyn's
brilliant.
muted.
Yeah, Marilyn, you're muted. We can't hear you. Now you're muted. Now you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. No. Okay. Okay. So let me just ask another question until she finds out. So in an attack, what's the first thing you suggest people can do to get them out of the situation?
To stop struggling.
Yeah.
Which is really, really hard. It's really hard to not get panicky and to start struggling, right? So that's a big piece. So to counter that is to physically make oneself relax the body, because I work a lot with people's posture. So if the posture is tense, the breathing will be tense. If the posture is relaxed, then the breathing will start to relax. So that's kind of another piece. And the third one is, if someone has been working on their breathing, getting their mouth closed and breathing through their nose is going to make a big difference right away. If someone is a chronic mouth breather and they don't have experience breathing through their nose, that's not going to help. It's going to make it worse, right? So when I've worked with someone, let's say for 2 weeks, and they had chronic congestion, their nose was always blocked up, you know, sometimes their ears would even block up. So I would be working on clearing their nose, right? There's a technique for clearing your nose. And so once they're comfortably nose breathing, then I can say to them, if they're having asthma, okay, your mouth has been open. That is part of why you're having asthma right now. Close your mouth, relax your upper body, focus on using that diaphragm, right? And so then that's the first step. If there's no relief, if they can't do that little breath hold I'm telling you about, go get your puffer, right? It's okay. We're experimenting, you know. The longer you do this, the more confidence you'll have in the technique, and eventually you're going to be able to overcome. Yeah.
Perfect.
But yeah, in terms of other conditions, it's really about how long, and also comorbidity, right? So if someone is obese, that's a huge strain, not only on the heart, but also on the lungs. It's a lot of struggle just to move around, right? So it takes more time.
Yeah. What about sleep apnea? This sounds something that people with sleep apnea could really benefit from.
Yes, actually, when I first started teaching Buteyko, it's like you are drawn to the people who have a similar condition as yourself,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
that was definitely the first 7 years of teaching Buteyko.
Mhm.
And then what happened, it was snoring and insomnia and sleep apnea. And so the sleep apnea piece happened because most people are given three options. One is to lose weight, which for a lot of people makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
Two is they get a CPAP machine. And three, they get a dental appliance, right? And so for the last two, of course, that's for the rest of your life. You're taking this machine, which used to make you look like an elephant. They're much more sophisticated now. So you're on that for the rest of your life. And if you have a 30-year-old single male and you tell him that, I mean, they're pretty upset about that, right? And then with the
Absolutely.
appliances, they start affecting your teeth. They start affecting your jaw and the workings of your jaw and your TMJ. So there's difficulties there. But
Mhm.
the dirty little stat that they don't tell you at the sleep specialist clinic is that of the people that do the tests, the polysomnograph, of those people who do it, and it's recommended that they do a CPAP machine, 50% of them who try it, because you get a month trial,
Mhm.
50% of them reject it. They can't tolerate it, right? The other 50% are of them. So now we're talking about 25% of that whole cohort are
Yeah.
still using the CPAP machine a year later.
Mhm.
So what happens to the other 75%? What do they do? Right? They continue to suffer. They continue to worry about having a heart attack or a stroke.
Yeah.
And they continue to worry about driving in their car and falling asleep at the wheel. Right?
Yeah.
It's a horrible option.
Yeah.
And so those are the people that come to see me.
Mhm.
So naturally, when you're asleep, you don't know what your breathing is.
Mhm.
Right? So the thing is about breathing being a habit.
Mhm.
So if you change your habit during the day, then you start to change your habit at night. And then we also look at sleep hygiene,
Mhm.
right?
Of course.
Which I think is a weird word. The word is like, do you wash your pillows? Is that what that means? You know, but really, sleep hygiene is about, okay, when did you have your last meal? How far away from when you went to bed? When did you exercise? Do you drink alcohol before you go to bed? Is your bedroom a mess? Is it dusty? Does your animal sleep with you?
Mhm.
Right? Where is your phone? Is your phone next to your head or is it way over there or in another room?
Mhm.
Do you have blackout curtains? There's a lot of things that I look at. I give these like 30 questions to somebody
Mhm.
about their bedroom when they start to
Yes.
work with me. So we create an environment that is conducive to improving your breathing,
Mhm.
right?
Perfect.
And so then over time, it is slower, the
Mhm.
sleep apnea. Over time, the breathing improves at night
Mhm.
and the sleep improves too. So it kind
Perfect.
of reverses. First, the apneas become less,
Mhm.
particularly if you train someone to sleep on their side. I
Mhm.
mean, sorry, I rant sometimes. I've had people who've come to me with their sleep study. And so I'm looking through it. I mean, they're like 30 pages long and there's all this
Mhm.
data, right? And so I always look at what position do they mostly sleep in, right? Usually it's the back, okay? That is the worst position for snoring. It's the worst position for an apnea. I had one client who all of their apneas were on their back. They had no apneas when they were on their side or on their stomach. And I said to them, we're going to train you to sleep on your side. And guess what? Your apneas are going to disappear.
Mhm. That's fantastic.
Or you can spend
Fantastic.
$2,000 or $3,000 on the CPAP machine for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, but very lightly.
Very lightly. All right, I'll be back again. I want to make it right.
Okay. So yes, the sleep apnea will decrease significantly. I
Mhm.
love it when people have a recent sleep study
Mhm.
and then they do Buteyko, and then 6 months to a year later, I have them do another sleep study. That's like the perfect situation because it's right there in black and white with hard numbers that tells you what the changes are. And really, sleep apnea is the best for convincing people about the efficacy of it. Most of the time it's self-reported improvement, right? Which has validity, of course.
Mhm.
But when you're talking to the medical world, it's like, whatever.
Well, That's the same old, I think, in
Yes.
that respect.
Yeah, I think everybody on this call probably understands that piece.
Yeah. Dr. Deepak,
Yes,
you
Christine.
had a question.
Yes, because we know this, the problem of the respiratory complaint like bronchitis and asthma is very in large number in developing country, like in India. There is a lot of pollution is here, and like China and many countries are there. But yes, we lost our breathing techniques. As you said, 200 year ago, we just breathed about 10 to 12, and now we are with 18 or 20 or 22. So here in India, we are doing yoga in like that, your breathing exercise, and many of us is do not aware about that, that our nostrils, the both nostrils are not flow together, only one flow at a time. Like if the right one is working, left one is in silent, and the left one is working, and the right one is the silent. So there are many techniques in yoga also, and in this situation, in this era, we are just inhaling more and more and less exhaling. So in India, we are teaching about this exercise that you just exhale yourself as much as you can, and body can inhale spontaneously. So this is a good technique to everyone, and this is not only for asthma. You are right. This is a need of an hour for every people, because we are living in this polluted world where we cannot eat healthy, we cannot breathe healthy. So these exercises are really beneficial, and this is really a good lecture of you. And thank you, Ota, for introducing to us. So we need to more and more know about these exercises. If you can explain, many of our us are like to hear about them more exercises.
Yes, of course. I'm happy to do that. I just wanted to make comment about yoga and yogic breathing. Well, two probably. The first one is that was one of the first things I tried when I was living in Japan, is that I did go to yoga class. And when we were focused on the postures and, moving slowly through them, I was okay. But the moment that we started doing any breathing techniques, I was just watching, and they were doing breath of fire, and I'm like, I'm gonna have an asthma attack if I do that. And it was very awkward because it was my very first class, and of course you want to conform and kind of be a good student. And I was just like, I can't do it. I know I will have an asthma attack, and you feel that vulnerability when you're in public. And later, I could go back to yoga, and later I could do those breathing techniques because my breathing was then healthy. So it's kind of interesting that for me, yogic breathing didn't work because I was so unstable. And I don't know a lot about yoga. I don't do yoga. I do some of the stretches, but I don't do yogic breathing. But there are many people now who are Buteyko educators, but their primary modality is yoga. And there's a big controversy in North America now. I can't speak to India, but in North America now, there's a big controversy about breathing in the yogic world, because how many people are going back to the source from India, like 110 years ago, those treaties from the 1910s? How many people are there, and how many people have kind of wandered off to do their own thing, which works for them, but not necessarily works for anybody else? So that's just an interesting piece that I'm kind of watching from the side. But, sometimes my yoga friends who are the Buteyko teachers, they get very passionate about it, because Buteyko is based in science.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead,
Okay.
Marilyn.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk, and I've been waiting. So my mother does this kind of breathing, but when you answer Deepak's question, I'd love you to also comment about athletes or people who work out, and what this could do for their technique or their longevity in whatever they're doing, whether it's swimming or whatever it is. Because I feel that the better you breathe, the better you can exercise.
Right, exactly. So getting back to what Deepak was talking about, alternate nose breathing, and what you've just mentioned, Marilyn, with Buteyko, if you can't comfortably nose breathe, everything else is more difficult. I have worked with people who have broken their nose, like from playing hockey in Canada. That's kind of standard. And so then we have to work with that, right? Okay, the nose is no longer functioning, so we'll just focus on the other pieces of what it takes to be a good breather. But with the alternate nose breathing, if you can't breathe through both nostrils, just try it. Just close off one nostril and breathe through the other. And maybe close your eyes so you can really feel the air moving through or not. And then try the other side. So if you have pretty good breathing, one nostril will be dominant, right? It will be easier to breathe through one nostril than the other. For some people, they can't at all breathe it through the other nostril, right? That's not a good thing. So the reason that one is dominant and the other is subordinate is that we have erectile tissue in our nose and it engorges, right? And the thing is, through the day, it switches, right? So right now, maybe let's say that your right nostril is dominant. If you check again in about 20 minutes, you'll find that your left nostril is dominant, or it should be, right? And then it's going to switch back. So it goes like this all day long, right? Back and forth, back and forth. And it has to do with oxygenation of each side of the brain. So if your nose is blocked, that means the other side of your brain is not getting the oxygen that it needs. It's getting less. So that's going to affect you cognitively, right? And so that's an important piece to be aware of. So what happens at night, back to the sleep apnea piece, is that if someone has chronic congestion, for example, or they're sleeping on their back and their mouth is wide open, right? That is affecting that function of the nose. So at night, that fluctuation drops to 90 minutes or 110 minutes, maybe 2 hours, right? So one actually closes. So this will engorge. This one's open. Guess which side you sleep on? You turn over, because this is to the air, right? And then after 2 hours, this one opens, the other engorges, and you turn over. And so you turn over 3 or 4 times a night, which is what should happen. If you sleep in the same posture all night long, how are you going to feel in the morning? Right? So you're going to have a numb arm, right? If people are sick, they're going to get bed sores. So there's all these amazing functions of the body that, are subtle and small and just like, who cares? It's important. They're all important. So to respond to Deepak's other question in terms of one of the breathing techniques. Okay, let's do the nose clearing exercise. Okay, let's do that one. I'm very happy to go through that one with anybody who on the street, do you want to see this? Let me show you. It's really great. Okay, now it would be wonderful if there's people on this call. I know as homeopaths that you're going to, generally speaking, be healthier than the general population. Hopefully there's somebody who's listening in who has a really blocked up nose right now. And so I can't see the chat, which is fine. I find it distracting. But it would be really cool if those people could put up their hand and say, yeah, I have a very blocked up nose right now, because it's going to be different in a few minutes. Anyway, okay. So this is the technique, all right? So all of the breathing exercises start on the exhale, never on the inhale, okay? So that's an important piece. If you do it wrong, it just means that nothing happens. So again, let's just check. Okay, here we go. So a gentle breath in, a gentle breath out, pinch your nose, hold your breath, and nod your head. Keep nodding until you start to feel uncomfortable. Release your nose, keep your lips together. Don't open your mouth. Really important. Okay, don't talk to me yet. Dominating the conversation here. Okay, really important to keep your lips together. Okay, so take a few breaths. And we're going to do it again in a moment. Okay, gentle breath in. Gentle breath out. Pinch your nose. Nod your head. So you're holding your breath on the exhale, nodding until you start to feel uncomfortable, not till your cheeks are red and your eyes are bugging out. Then you release your nose and keep breathing through it, right? You keep your lips together and you breathe in through your nose. You're good. You guys can hold a long time. Now, check again. Is it clearer? Okay. When people have chronic congestion, this will last about 5 minutes, right? But the more you do it, the better it gets, the more the nose starts to function. I was a chronic mouth breather, probably from the age of 7 until I did Buteyko. So, it was a long time. And it was probably a year of focusing on nose breathing and doing that exercise, like, I don't know, 10 times a day, because I didn't want to use the Claritin, the decongestants, right? And in those days, I didn't know about eucalyptus oil and other oils, right? And I'm sure that would have been, I should have tried homeopathy. Didn't do that in Japan. But anyway, for me, it was so disheartening that after a year, I still had to pay attention. Am I nose breathing or mouth breathing right now? Because it would often be like, yeah, you're still mouth breathing. And I remember clearly thinking, will there ever be a time where nose breathing is more comfortable than mouth breathing for me? And there was. It took a while. It was about 14 months, but I remember it clearly. Sort of like, do you remember where you were when John F. Kennedy died, right? It was sort of on that level for me. It was a personal thing. I was only a little kid when he died. So it was just that thing. It's like, oh my God, I just opened my mouth and it feels horrible. It feels awful to breathe through my mouth. Yay, finally. So I was hardcore.
Christine, I have a comment about this.
Please.
When I was a kid at the Y in Jerusalem, I was in the swimming team. And in the beginning, when you go in and say, oh boy, I'm going to swim, but it was very little swimming. The exercise that we had to do all the time, every time, was standing, holding to the edge of the pool in the water and start going up and down underwater and coming up. You come up and you take a deep breath and you go down and you blow it and you start coming up and you blow it and you get out of the water. You take a deep breath and you go down and you blow it. But it's about, I would say, 2 seconds, 3 seconds each repetition. And we had to do it until we could go underwater the 25 meters. And until today, I find out that when I go into a pool, the first thing I do is stand on the side and do that, go up and down and up. And you feel like, boy, I'm really, I'm breathing much better. Is that the same kind of trick or whatever? Or is this just to enrich the body with oxygen?
Well, I think that your teacher was brilliant. I mean, that is excellent, to be able to get that relationship developed around water and to be comfortable with holding your breath. And of course, cultivating a bigger lung capacity, right? That's what happens when you swim. And when you swim underwater for 25 meters and you're holding your breath, you're building up a lot of CO2 in your system and you're controlling the exit from the body by blowing up bubbles as you're going through, right? And so it's a really great way. I mean, and it was one of the few ways that people with asthma can exercise when they don't know breathing techniques, is that's really, really good for them. And I, as a kid, a very active kid, getting back to Marilyn's question, I was always fascinated when I would watch the Olympics and they would always talk about how the swimmers had asthma. And I'm like, well, what about the other? What about the runners? What about the jumpers? What about these other people? Don't they have asthma? And I would never hear it in relationship, right? But I did about swimming. And it's like, what's that about swimming? And it wasn't until I did Buteyko that I understood what was going on. Because what happens is that people, when they have poor breathing, is they overbreathe. and they have dysfunctional breathing in many ways. But overbreathing is a common one. Some people hold their breath, they're under breathing, and then they breathe a lot, right? So there's that swing that happens. But in terms of swimming, you can't overbreathe. There's only so amount of air you can take as you come up for air when you're doing your front crawl, and then you put your face in the water, right? And so then you're swimming, right? And then you put your face up and down. It's the only one where there's that control. It doesn't allow you to overbreathe. And there's a lot of things that are pretty magical, actually. Sometimes people stumble on them, and other people do it deliberately, like with Buteyko. So talking about swimming, there's this woman named Sarah. I can't pronounce her name. It starts with an S and it's like Sojman. I can't remember. She's Swedish. And I was watching on YouTube a video of her 50-meter butterfly, and she broke the world record. You could Google her, right? YouTube, Sarah, 50-meter, breaking the record. And you watch it. You watch that event. She dives in the water, and she does not come up for air until she hits the wall. She does not come up for air until she hits the wall. That's extraordinary. You're really exerting yourself when you're doing the butterfly, right? And so she's hit on the secret of Buteyko, which is carbon dioxide is not the enemy. It is not a waste gas. It's really, really important for good oxygenation of your tissues. And people miss that all the time, right? If you're in trouble, they'll check your oxygen saturation levels. Will they check your CO2 levels? No, they won't. But oxygen and carbon dioxide are two wings of the breathing bird. They work together. You have too much or too little of one of them, you're going to have dysfunction happening, right? So getting back to Marilyn and physical exercise, I love working with athletes. It is so much fun. For one thing, they're very motivated. They're very disciplined. They'll do what you tell them. There won't be all these reasons why they can't. And they see spectacular changes really quickly because they've got the physical fitness. They've got the technique for whatever it is that they're learning. They've got it all down, but they don't have the breathing down. And so then you get fatigue, you have lack of stamina, right? And the whole thing of upping your game is measured when you're at a really high elite level in like tenths of a second, hundredths of a second, right? So if you can get a little bit of an edge there, it's pretty amazing, but it works for everybody. My most profound experience actually was working with a woman who was very overweight, probably my height, I'm 5'2". She was probably 320 pounds. And when she would come to class from the parking lot into the lobby, which was about, I'll say, 30 feet, she would stop twice. She would have to stop twice to catch her breath. So very overweight, she didn't have she had high blood pressure. That was a big one for her. And she would get palpitations. So she was not exercising at all. And so she came into the clinic and I said to her, I'll call her Mary. And I said, one of the first things we're going to do with you, one of our first goals is that you're going to get from your car to the lobby without stopping. That's one of the first things we're going to do. And so we worked together, and the freedom, the liberation she experienced when she was not breathless was extraordinary to watch. It was so amazing. And to see her walking with confidence and not being tentative and fearful, getting from the car to the lobby was pretty amazing. And that's exercise, that's exercise in my mind for her. And it made a huge difference for her. It was the beginning of her seeing that there was a way out of this prison that she was in, right? Which was pretty amazing. But in terms of working with athletes, I have a friend who he works in Bend, Oregon. And that's kind of one of the meccas of the US, right, in terms of outdoor sports. And so he retired early from his job. He was living in Belgium for a long, long time. And he did Buteyko also for really bad asthma, and decided this was going to be his next career after being a corporate guy for a long time. Pretty big change. Anyway, so he was into cycling and cycling up and down these mountains. And he decided that he was going to focus on Buteyko breathing and exercise. And so what he did, here he is, he's in his late 50s, pretty fit. And initially he was getting people around his age who were very good athletes. They were doing masters competitions. So, for their age group, right? And they wanted that edge. They were like 11th or 12th, and they wanted to be on the podium. That was their goal. And so what he would do with them is he would work with their breathing, in a classroom, and then they would go out and they would cycle. And he would say to them, okay, we're going to cycle on the flat. We're just going to go around and around and around downtown, and you are not going to breathe through your mouth. And they're just like, what are you talking about? This is boring. I do, sprint. I sprint for, my 20K or whatever it is. And he said, nope, that's what we're going to do, but you have to breathe through your nose. And so they're all grumbling. And it's like, oh, this is stupid, because they can't do it, right? They're like going around like this, and they feel like they're 95 years old because they can't switch from the mouth breathing to nose breathing. It's like, this is impossible. I can't get enough oxygen if I'm breathing through my nose. Lots of complaining, right? And he said, okay, I want you to go out there and do your regular thing, right? And I want you to measure how long it takes you to recover. So do your 20K. Tell me how long it takes you to do your 20K, and then measure how long it takes for recovery. Recovery is when you can't hear yourself breathing, your chest and your shoulders are not going fast, your breathing has come down, right? And so then they go off and they do that. And of course, when they come back, then he's like, okay, so now you're going to do it again. And I do this all the time with my clients. You're going to do it again, and you're going to do it breathing through your nose. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. I said, okay, we'll do it this way. Do it again. See how long you can go breathing through your nose before you switch to mouth breathing. Okay. How many times do you switch back and forth from nose breathing to mouth breathing? So they agree to do that. But their time is slower, and they're not happy. Their time is slower, and it's not so much fun. But what they're starting to see is that the recovery time is faster, a little bit faster. Not a lot, but a little bit faster. So that little bit of change is like, that's kind of interesting. And so then the next time they go out, instead of switching back and forth 10 times, they're switching back and forth 5 times. And the recovery time is getting shorter. And then they're switching back and forth 1 or 2 times, and the recovery time is getting shorter. So over a period of a month or so, they have managed to switch from nose breathing to mouth breathing. And then the magic starts. Let's say, I don't know. I don't know with cycling how fast you can go 20K. Let's say you can do it in 10 minutes. I don't know. And with the nose breathing, initially the time may be double, right? That transition. And then it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And then that time goes 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 8.5 minutes, 8 minutes, 7 3/4 minutes. And now these people are on the podium. Because their breathing is efficient. And when you have enough CO2 in your system, you are offloading oxygen much faster.
Fabulous. That's fantastic to hear. And this is certainly something in sports that's very, very important and very interesting for people. It's also very interesting for practitioners. So I would like to know, if I want to learn Buteyko, what do I do, and how long does it take for me to learn this?
Okay, so there's 2 parts. The first is you learn it for your own health, because you need to be a good model, right? Mm-hmm. It's like homeopathy. If you're not taking it, then what are you doing, right? You're out of integrity. So that's the first thing, is that you do it for your own health. And usually I ask people for about 3 months of working on their own breathing. It depends if you have chronic conditions or not. But you know what? Sometimes the greatest inspiring people are the ones who have been really sick and maybe still sick and still working on it. I mean, they can be just as inspiring as kind of the perfect model, right? And so then after that is the training. And it's ironic that you bring this up now, because the Buteco Breathing Educators Association, which is, I was the founding president of that 10 years ago. We're in the process of completely revamping the training. The last 2 years have been incredibly frustrating to not be able to do it in person, because I am a trainer. And so typically people have webinars and they have a lot of readings to do before the course gets going. And then we are on site with clients, right? And so people see a number of different people with different conditions and how you use the breathing technique differently depending on who you're working with, right? And how to evaluate what you're seeing. You know, where is the problem with this particular person, right, in terms of their breathing? And so that would be like a very intensive 12 hours a day for 8 days kind of thing. With COVID, you know, that's been like blowing up, right? And so haven't been able to do that. And so then we've been scrambling. How do we do this online? And, you know, to be honest with you, I hate it. And it's like so insufficient for what's needed to be able to really learn this and to be able to really teach it well. Doing it online, I mean, when you're in person, you know all this. When you're in person, you know, there's all these elements that you're picking up about who you're dealing with. You cannot see when you're doing Zoom. You know, so it's like, okay, let's look at your diaphragm here. Okay, okay, put your hands here. You know, it's like all I need to do is go up to them and put my hand, you know, on their body and close my eyes and listen and feel, right? And that piece. So anyway, there is training. We're still doing a modified version in person, but it's awkward. And I find it, I kind of get antsy about it. It's like, come on, it could be so much better. But anyway, it is what it is. So yes.
And how do patients find you?
I do have a website, which is pretty lame right now. It's called breathinglady.com. But if you go to Buteco, BBEA, Buteco Breathing Educators Association, that's really the best way, because then you can find somebody who's closer to you or in the same time zone as you. I don't know if there's anyone teaching it in India, but certainly there is in Europe. There's a number of people in Europe. And there were a couple of people in Southeast Asia, but a lot of us are getting old and so retiring, right? But that's really the best way, because then you're finding people who are qualified.
Perfect. I mean, the hour is already up, and it's been so interesting and so very informative. I am really thrilled to have learned so much today. Marilyn, Deepak, any last words?
No, I was very, you know, I was, we're going to spend an hour talking about breathing, and I am, you know, seriously, but you were terrific. I mean, you were honest, you were terrific. You explained everything. We went into all kinds of areas. This was terrific. So thank you so much for everything.
Yes, this is really wonderful. Within an hour, we just cannot even start the breathing techniques. So we need a time for that. And even in this last 1 hour, we are learning a lot within himself. And yes, this is really a good technique. And I suggest all of you who are listening us that you start healthy breathing from now. That is wonderful. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Very much.
And we have some things coming up, right, Uta?
We have things coming up. Yes, what do we have coming up? We have a coffee, the virtual coffee coming up on the 17th of this month. So head over to our website, that's homeopathyworldcommunity.com. Go to the calendar and you can register for the virtual coffee, where you can have a chat with some of the board members and some of our members and not members. And we will just chat about contemporary things concerning not just homeopathy, but life in general. We'd love to do these just on a very open talk about whatever's going on in the world. So hope to see you there. Thank you very much, Christine. Thank you very much, Deepak. Thank you very much, Marilyn and Amnon. It was another fantastic show. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice to meet you, Chris.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all. This was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. It was.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.